Okay, so Jersey Shore. Okay, so the reality
Shore.
TV, the media, the Facebook. So let me step back for a moment and ask: did anyone not check off anything or not identify anything on those two slides? Okay. Did anyone check off everything? Yeah.
Almost,
Okay.
almost.
Okay. So you can see that there's usually some of those are very common time wasters or barriers. So anything else that anyone would like to share that really is definitely something you relate to? A time waster. Okay, so you all are in the major that you're in, and you're interested in communications and media. I'm not surprised if there's a lot of that also can be a distraction. We're also going to talk about ways of using some of those distracting kinds of things in a helpful way. So we'll get to that as well. But after you identify what are those things that cause you some problems, there's some steps that we're going to talk about taking. But in general, then these are often the common obstacles to managing time. And we're going to focus on many of these in more detail. And if there are any that we don't get to that are really significant for you, we'll have time. I'll ask you to let me know so we can go into that. But I want to start with procrastination. How many people, if you care to share, checked off procrastination, that you procrastinate? Okay, all right. And we can all procrastinate. It's something that is very common. And one of the things, what do you think causes procrastination? Laziness. Okay. Anybody else think that? Everybody, people, okay?
Being uninterested in the things that you have to do.
When you're not interested, okay? Okay, a lack of interest, okay?
Lack of focus.
Well, also sometimes being overwhelmed and then just needing a break and then just not wanting to get back to it.
Okay, you're overwhelmed, you need a break, you take a break, and you don't want to go back to it.
Knowing that you have time to do it, just kind of
okay.
just take time.
Okay, because you've got plenty of time, then it's easy to push it up. So we're going to address all those things. But I want to start by saying procrastinators are not lazy. Okay? They're not typically lazy. Okay? However, that is a common belief. It might be a common feeling. I can relate to that. Sometimes I go, oh, I'm being lazy. But if I'm putting something off. However, if we look a little closer at what is the root of procrastination, often there's a lot of information that we might not have considered. It is actually can be a complex kind of thing that goes on in the way that we're thinking about whatever it is that we need to do. Often the way that we're thinking about ourselves and how we approach something. It can come from a feeling of paralysis, fear, being overwhelmed. Okay? If the task is too big, if we think it's going to be too difficult, or if it's ambiguous, if it's not clear to us. Okay? And so if that's the reason, and I would also say that sometimes, somebody mentioned, you're just not interested. It can also happen that, if we're feeling overwhelmed, one of the ways that, kind of our defense mechanisms that we might not even be aware of is we might then feel, that our interest, our motivation, is waning or we're not feeling interested because we've become so overwhelmed. We can actually experience indifference, okay? Not because we truly don't care, but because that's just kind of our defense mechanism. Does that make sense? If we don't know where to start or how to approach something, we're feeling overwhelmed, we can feel, we can feel frozen, paralyzed, and indifferent sometimes. So, some strategies, and the idea then is if we think a little bit about, okay, I'm putting this off, what am I really saying to myself? It's a good question to ask. And that often, if the reason that you're procrastinating, putting off doing something is because you're confused or it's unclear to you, that often is, you know, the way to just work right past that, get over that procrastination. Make sense? Okay. So that's a strategy to try if that's at the root. Perfectionism is also a common root of procrastination. Why? Why would that be? How does perfectionism lead to procrastination? Yes.
Well, if you're striving for something to be perfect, you're afraid to submit what you have to hand in because you're afraid of judgment or how someone else will react to it, so you just hold back from ever doing that task.
Okay. Okay, so if you're a perfectionist, if you're thinking in a perfectionist way about something, what actually is it that you're saying to yourself? Or kind of what might you be saying to yourself? What is your style of thinking if you're thinking in a perfectionist?
It's not good enough?
Not good enough. So that's often, my best is not good enough, is often, or some version of that. You know, I have to do it absolutely